Welcome to the Wanna Grab Coffee podcast. In our first ever episode recorded as a group, Charles, Igor, and I discuss the importance of taking a break. We talk about the tricks our brain plays on us as we think what we are doing in this moment is too important to put down, and some of the motivations behind such thinking. We also cover some of the physical, emotional, and relational health impacts around deferring intentional downtime. And finally, we share some practical tips for leaders and individual contributors around how to take a break, even on a busy schedule. What's up, guys?
We're live. Hey.
Howdy.
Do you want to hum our song intro? No? Okay.
But I do have a very important question. Igor.
Yeah.
How are you and what are you drinking?
I'm distracted, really. Got this big project that's has a pending deadline this Friday, but I wanted to take some time out with my friends and chat with you today. So that's going to energize me to actually get that project done in a better way. And what I'm drinking today is, I'm mostly done, but it's a shot of espresso. Always comes out perfect, no user error. And, getting me caffeinated.
Awesome. Charles, how are you and what are you drinking?
I am quite tired, actually. Haven't been sleeping well the past couple of nights. Had a big sales meeting earlier today that always kind of gets me on edge. And I love coffee, but I can only drink a little bit of coffee in the morning. Otherwise, I can't sleep. And so right now, I've got a little corksicle tumbler full of ice water. So that's what I'm drinking right now. But this morning, it was just drip coffee, community coffee, in a one of those drip coffee makers. How about you, Robert?
Great. Yeah, I'm doing well. Similar to Igor, I have under the gun to get this project done, so I will be glad when that's all wrapped up at the end of the week. And kids have started full in school, and so now I'm a homeschooler in addition to my full-time job, which is always fun. And I'm drinking La Colombe coffee, cold brew mocha. You'll recognize the can because this is a frequent choice of mine when we're actually together drinking coffee by the office. And so I ordered a few and stocked up on them ahead of the quarantine, which was a good choice. And so I'm just burning those down.
Yeah, let's walk over to the Whole Foods.
Yep, Whole Foods, and then Foxtrot has it as well. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I break these out on special occasions, and this is one of them.
Well, I've got one of those like single hand press espresso shot things. I don't know if y'all have seen that before. Like you could put the ground in there, and then you just pour the water through the top, and you press it down, and it makes a single espresso. That's what I was planning to do, and then I just ran out of time. So sorry, guys.
Hey, no worries.
You might have to record some of these in the morning so Charles can actually drink the coffee he makes for the podcast.
We know that for the next time now for sure.
Well, that's true. I think most times when I go with Charles in the afternoon, he'll get like a green tea or something less caffeinated.
Decaf. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, you ready to jump into the topic today?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. So we're thinking take a break, and we are several months into the quarantine now. We've all been working from home every day, been generally locked up inside the house with some combination of family members in and out, and read this really interesting article on Medium around these adaptive systems have, like humans, have surge capacity to get through, to survive through a very short-term event. And this is we're sort of on edge in this crisis for months and months and months straight with really no reprieve. And that takes a toll over time. And I know that, if you look at our people on our teams, they're not taking PTO at nearly the rate that they were before. And I think that this initial rush of adrenaline that we've experienced when we see teams getting more velocity done when they're when the lockdown first started, when everyone was working from home, that's starting to fade now. And we're getting into this more long-term burn that we as humans need to find a way to make sustainable on an individual and family level. And so that's what I wanted to talk to y'all about today. So any thoughts on that, or taking time off, or carving out time for self-care, things like that?
Robert, you just came back from a vacation.
I did.
So, you say a couple months, it's actually over 6 months. We went into lockdown mode on, I think, 3/14 or 3/15, something like that. I'm looking at my calendar now. It is 8/27. So we are, probably a week past, almost 2 weeks past our 6-month time frame. You hadn't taken a break before that. That was just a couple of weeks ago, right? That was probably right at the 6-month mark. And what drove you to take a break, and how did you get there?
Yeah, good question. So I did the math. I looked back, and I hadn't taken any time off since December. And then I had tried to take a few days and then up to a week off around July 4th, but just in the chaos of everything going on, didn't really feel like I could. Felt like there was stuff that needed to get done.
Do you think that was accurate, Robert?
No,
Like,
and
you could have taken that time off and it would have been fine.
it would have been fine. And I say that for two reasons. One, looking back to material time off I've taken in the past, like when my kids were born, and that was over a month that I took off. I think 9 weeks when my son was born. And you think the stuff you do is so important, and the world just goes right on by without you. Everyone was fine. We're actually, where we work, we've sort of adapted. We've evolved to handle people being out for long periods of time because we offer sabbatical. And so we're really good at covering for one another. And so when I got back, I was really surprised at how little I was needed during that time off. Everybody just sort of adapted. And so that's the data points I'm looking at, is my experience and what I've observed covering for other people. And thinking through the week that I actually took off this big project that we're working on, that was when the whole thing kicked off. And I pushed my vacation last time for something that was by definition less important. And so, yeah, there are other capable people around me who can handle things as good as or better than I can. And so really all I did was hurt my individual well-being and productivity and stress levels, because I certainly could have taken that time off. And what I did differently, which I think is probably what you'd ask next, is basically just told the people around me, hey, I already pushed my vacation once. It's been 6 months. I need to take a break. And I got a lot of support around, hey, we'll cover for you. Let's get these people involved on this thing. And it's all come together without me. And so I think a lot of times our either FOMO or pride or whatever you want to call it gets in the way of taking care of yourself, because you think that what you're doing is so important, but other people around you can certainly do it as well.
What did you end up doing, Robert? Because I think that's the thing that I've been struggling with the most, because I connect taking chunks of time off from work with traveling. And I know you can travel, but I think if we're being honest, our ability to do that's pretty restricted in certain regards. And so, that's been a big hang up for me. What did you end up doing?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you connect sort of chunks of time off with travel?
Yeah, my preference is to definitely try to wrap an experience within a chunk of time off. In this case, though, we didn't go anywhere. We stayed close to home. We interact fairly regularly with my wife's parents, and so we're trying to be extra careful around our exposure, things like that. And so we stayed at home, worked with Amelia on riding bikes, exercised every day, started reading a book. I got about halfway through, worked on some homeschool prep with Amelia as well. played outside, went on walks. And so it was definitely leisure time, if you want to think of it like that. I did things I wanted to do. I was more active, and some things were work around the house, that kind of stuff. But really, it was not work related. I wasn't sitting at this chair in front of my computer, and ultimately I got a lot more freedom and control over what I did for the day, and that was relaxing. I felt really unplugged around Wednesday.
Charles, have you taken any kind of chunks of time off since March?
Yeah, I have actually a couple of chunks. It's all around schooling with the kids. So I think end of May, early June, I was off for a week, summer vacation, and then I had another week off before summer vacation ended, and the kids went back to school. So I've had two, I think, 1 week chunks since March. And I typically associate vacation with travel because I think that's what I would prefer to do with my free time, is to immerse myself in some other location, some other city, some other culture. And it was hard because the first week, both of those weeks of vacation were just here, just at my place with the kids. And the first chunk at the beginning of the summer was actually really nice, just kind of settling into a daily routine, make coffee first thing in the morning, and make breakfast for the kids and plan out the day with them. The second chunk was mostly that, but we took a day trip to a drive-through safari in East Texas, which was, it was nice to get out of the city, in a safe bubble that is my car. And just changing scenery in the environment in that way did wonders for disconnecting. I think it's easier to disconnect if you get on an airplane and you fly 12 hours to the other side of the world. Much, much harder to do when you've got a staycation. And I think that's a lot of what people are struggling with when taking vacations. It's like, well, if I can't travel around the world, I won't, because if I just stay home and do a staycation, there's nothing stopping me from staying plugged in, right? And checking email and responding. And, Robert, as you were talking about taking time off, I was thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we talked about last time. And that might be useful to help explain why so many people have a hard time taking time off. Like it's like a luxury. It's a leisure thing when you're not in crisis. Now it's more of a necessity, right? And I don't think people are able to recognize that and just take the time off that they need. And that's why we're all on the boat that we are in, where we're out of that. What did you call it, Robert? Surge capacity is gone.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like every week at the end of the week, I'm exhausted. Like I'm ready for the weekend to start, and I'm able to disconnect over the weekend. But then the next week is just like, it's a sprint to the end of the day on Friday again. And that is very hard to maintain without some deliberate focus on self-care. And anyway, very important topic, I think.
And just a quick shout out to Tara Hale. I hope I got your last name right. So that was from an article that I saw on Medium that she wrote on August 17th, and really resonated with me because there was a lot of similarities in dealing with kids and dealing with this just constant burn, and then why it feels different going through a pandemic, going through a crisis, than it does maybe in a time where you had just have a busy month or something like that. So we'll put the link in the show notes for sure. But it really helped sort of open things up for me.
Igor, I don't think we asked you if you took time off. I I want to let you answer that too. And maybe you can think about this question as well, because I'm curious if you all have talking to folks on your team and convinced people to take vacation or time off. And if so, what was that like? But Igor, I'll let you talk about your time off if you've taken any.
Yeah, well, I think in connection to that, I'm just going to say that I feel like a total phony because I have definitely talked to everyone on my team and probably several times at this point about taking time for themselves and kind of doing that, chunk of relaxation. And I definitely have not done that myself. Right. So I don't think I've even taken a day off since COVID started. So I've just kind of been, working pretty steady state. And I really associate taking a vacation with traveling. Probably to almost like an unhealthy amount, because anytime I take any time off, even if it's a couple of extra days, I'm taking a road trip somewhere, right? Even if I'm not like, doing some grandiose trip overseas or anything like that, I'll go down to Austin or Houston or something like that and spend a couple of nights in a hotel and go to a concert or something like that. And it's been really hard to put myself into a mode where I can think about taking time off, because then I'm like, man, what a waste. I'm going to use up this time, but I'm not going to do the thing that I usually do. And the perspective that you brought forward, Charles, I think is really impactful for me. We should be taking time off for a different why and a different reason. And that reason is probably one or two rungs lower on the pyramid, the Maslow's hierarchy, right? And I haven't been able to like break through. And really, until you just said it, I haven't thought about it that way, right? But as soon as those words came out of your mouth, I was like, oh, we're meant to take time off for a different reason now. And it's okay, right? That we're not becoming more exposed or more cultured or adding a new experience to our belt or, whatever it is. And it's okay if it's just getting up in the morning and making your bed and being leisurely about, making a cup of coffee for yourself and then, going for a walk or for a bike ride and just doing that for yourself rather than walking over to your computer desk and, turning on Zoom and Slack and everything else that we turn on and maybe doing that for somebody else.
So you felt this resistance around taking time off because you couldn't couple it with travel. Do you also feel a sort of gravitational pull or an anxiety around taking time off because of how busy things are, because of what needs to get done? Do you feel like you could, or is it just the travel?
I had a couple of days that were scheduled off. Labor Day, Memorial Day, right? That's sort of the holiday that's passed, right? So we had Memorial Day. I had a couple of days that were scheduled sort of attached to Memorial Day weekend. And I ended up clawing those back. And partly because I felt that I needed to be present to get some other thing kind of across the line. But much in the same way that I think that wasn't true for you, it wasn't true for me. Right? Like I probably could have passed that off and somebody else could have covered for me and it would have gotten done, to the same quality or better. And you said something interesting. It was like this idea of pride. And I think partly it was pride that prevented me from doing that. And so, but I definitely feel like I can take time off. Like I don't feel I could take time off today and tomorrow, right? Because we do have a deadline and it's probably too quick of a turnaround for me to transfer ownership of that thing to somebody else. But, I've got time scheduled now on the other side of Labor Day. So the week of the 7th. And so I'm definitely going to take that time.
I'd like to unpack the pride piece a little bit, because as leaders, I think there's something important there to tease out, because both of you said things that resonate with me. And I think if I tried to look at the resistance that I've had to taking time off in the past 6 months, but even in general, just in general, I think I would say, yeah, it did come from a place of pride. And I think the pride piece was really around, and ego too. That's what you were talking about, Robert. I think it's pride in thinking that I have to do this, and if I don't, I will be judged and I will be seen as a not valuable member of the team and not contributing. And I'm supposed to work hard and work through these things and not complain about it. But ego is actually quite interesting, because what that implies by me saying, hey, no, I'm not going to take time off, I am going to stick through this to see it through to the end. It kind of assumes that that I think I can save the day. I can fix all the problems. I can. It's all on me to do, and I can rise to the occasion. And by me canceling my vacation, for example, it's going to make everything go away. It's like, wow, that's a pretty big ego, because we don't, as leaders, we don't deal with very simple problems, and that's just not true. So I think y'all have helped me realize that ego has gotten into the way in a really kind of innocuous way from me taking vacation. And it's actually quite humbling, when you step away and you see things come out better than they may have if you stuck around. Igor, you were talking about that. And that's a good reminder that as leaders, we've got to keep our ego in check. And that plays into, taking time off. So thanks for that, guys.
And also on that note too, there's certainly a ripple effect with the team. I want to spend some time on that as well before we end. Is you set an example, people watch you around what to do, especially in a time where there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty. And so if you are constantly working late, if you are constantly ignoring your family, ignoring your health, if you're pushing back and canceling your vacation, others are going to look at that and assume that that's what you expect from them. And you could create a situation through your actions of a perceived lack of safety around creating healthy boundaries between work and life if you don't model that yourself. And so I think it's really important that we're signaling, we're projecting the right thing to do, the healthy thing to do as leaders from a people-centric side of the equation, so that we can move forward together and get through this together, and we're not losing troops along the way because they get burned out and have a health episode or have an anxious episode, something like that. And so all the more reason, if you can't get over the I have to do this because it's so important to me, and you could say that a lot of that stems from professionalism, even if it is ego and pride. You want to do the right thing. You want to show up when you're needed. So a lot of that can be masked. But if you look at it from hey, I have to do this. This is an expectation of me as a leader to set an example for the team to follow. I think that will help unlock in people's mind, hey, not only is this an okay thing to do, it should be a mandatory thing to do. Put your mask on first, right? So that you can help others around you get theirs on.
That takes on a whole new meaning in a COVID era.
Yeah.
That's true.
Robert, I didn't schedule my vacation until you came back from yours. And whether it was conscious or subconscious, I think you taking that break was instrumental in me scheduling that time off and knowing that this time I'm going to be quite firm about taking it. Right. So there's a lot of truth in what you said and modeling that behavior. And that's why I said I really feel like a phony when I talk to my team about them taking time off and then I haven't done it. And so probably the best thing I can do for my team is take some time off myself and just show them, right? Not just tell them. So
Hey,
I
Igor,
want that from you.
on that note, when you talk to your team, do you share with them that you haven't taken time off?
I do.
Yeah. See, I think I knew the answer, but I wanted to double check. That's that vulnerability, I think, is really talk about the human side of leadership. That vulnerability, I think, is really impactful too. So I appreciate you sharing that with us here in a public forum, but I also appreciate you sharing that with your team, right? Because it's I would say you're not a phony. That just makes you human, right? But the fact that you're willing to open up and share that with others, I think, goes a long way in setting that example that Robert was talking about and trying to model healthy behavior. We shouldn't beat ourselves up, right? We are human. We make mistakes, and it's great when you've got a safe environment to share those things. Right? It kind of brings us all closer together.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so I'd like to close with a question for Charles and a question for Igor, if that's all right with you guys.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, Charles, what is one actionable thing if you're a leader and you're listening to this podcast? What's one thing you could do today to help move forward this idea of taking time off, of recharging, of a more sustainable journey through this crisis? And then Igor, on your side, put yourself in the mind of an individual contributor. And if you're not a leader at this point and you're a team member, what's something that you can do, practical, tactical, today to push this forward as well? So Charles from the leadership perspective, Igor from the individual contributor perspective.
Yeah, this came from me talking to a team member earlier on in the summertime. I think the very tactical, actionable advice would be open up your calendar, go at least 2 weeks into the future, block off a Monday, and tell your team that you're going to be out. And the 2 weeks into the future is very deliberate because especially in crisis mode, people are so focused on 1 week out at a time. 2 weeks out gives you enough wiggle room to try to block something off. Monday is very deliberate too. A lot of people think about extending their weekend by taking a Friday, but I think Monday sends a different signal both internally to yourself and to your team. And then sharing with your team, I think, adds an element of accountability. But if you tell people what you're going to do, you're going to be more apt to follow through because you would be going back on your word. And so that's what I would do. 2 weeks into the future at a minimum, block off a Monday and tell your team. Thank
you, Charles. Igor?
Yeah, I mean, is it weird that I would tell the individual contributor to do the exact same thing? I mean, no, like that's.
I was actually hoping that you would.
I think the answers to me is the same, and I would be really glad to see it, and maybe a couple of days, right? Maybe take a 4 or 5 day weekend, and I gave this advice to a good friend of mine very recently. Do something that's nourishing for yourself, right? Because you nourish your team, you nourish your family. Do something for yourself. For some people, that might be a massage, which I don't know if that's if that's happening nowadays, but something that's available and appropriate, and yeah, sort of reward yourself, right? Use that time to take off, but then also give yourself a little bit of a reward.
Yeah, love it. And then double down on the communication here. Say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is when. You could get into the reasons or not, but make sure that everyone around you knows when you're going to be out. The earlier you say something, the smoother, the easier things could go. So, yeah, great advice. Thanks, guys. It was great having coffee with you virtually.
Thanks. Pretty stoked.
Awesome. We'll talk soon.
Bye,
Have
guys.
a good one.
Cool. See ya.